Bush administration had a very extreme view on bioethics. Essentially, they were taking the line of people who claim that single cell embryos, which are invisible to the eye, should have the same rights as you or me. And that's an extreme view. It's not a view that most Americans hold. And scientists were arguing that they could take these single cells, embryos at this very early stage, when the embryo, you can create this embryo in a petri dish. These embryos are created in petri dishes to help women overcome infertility when the embryos are put back into the woman. But if you just work with these cells in a petri dish, the cells can't form a fetus. They can't form anything resembling a fetus or a human being. All they can do is grow into a bunch. And so there's a very nice line, which is that scientists can work with cells in a petri dish, and you say to them, okay, you can work with these cells. They're not human beings. We're going to work with them in a petri dish for research purposes to try to find cures for diseases. And that's what scientists would like. That's what many leaders of the Democratic Party would like. Sure, there's a line. You don't go across it. But it's nice. It's a nice line as far as science goes, because what you create in a petri dish is not a person. It can't be a person. The Obama administration has advisors like Harold Varmus and Eric Lander. Those are his two top science advisors. Those are leaders of the field of biotechnology. And the view I just gave you is the view that they hold. So they have the influence in the administration now. And I think they'll get the administration to slowly go in a direction which will support research in this way. The real-world impact that Obama is having should be looked at in contrast to the real-world impact that Bush had. During the Bush administration, it wasn't that human embryo research was illegal. Human embryo research was not illegal, generally speaking. If you used private money, you couldn't use government funds for the research, except in a very extremely limited way. And that set up an environment, an investment environment, and an environment of how people thought of what science was acceptable or not acceptable, in which the top scientists in the world, some of them just went to other countries. Singapore had a great influx of American scientists, and China is getting all the Chinese expatriates back. And California decided it was going to be the state that funded embryo research. And I had a student who studied this and found that the flow of young people to California was enormous. And so students would get their PhDs, and then they would go to California. Now, it's interesting what Obama has done already is change the environment. People understand that they're not going to be religious fanatics breaking down the doors anymore. We don't have that environment. And it's slowly getting to the point where research will be completely acceptable on cells in a petri dish. But the environment's already changed. The losers are Singapore and California. So, because California no longer has this unique position, scientists realize, well, they can go other places and be confident that their research won't be outlawed. The word cloning or term human cloning is a very unfortunate term in that it means something totally different to scientists than it means in general speak, in the way the public understands the word. And this is actually one of many examples of words that have specific scientific meanings, and those scientific meanings get distorted when those words go out into the public sphere. Cloning is one of those words. Cloning is a word, unlike most scientific words, which was defined actually by a scientist in a publication to mean a very specific thing. And it was used in the context of botany, and it was the idea that you could take a cutting from a plant, a cutting, clone means twig, and you could grow that plant, the second one, you could grow it, cutting from that, and that was cloning because you were getting a series of plants which were genetically identical to each other, and they wanted to have a word that explained that. So plants were not being produced sexually. That word then became part of the lexicon of molecular biologists about bacteria clone all the time. I give you a clone, you give me a clone. That's the way lab people talk. And then it burst into the public limelight with Dolly, cloned sheep. People now do not understand that the scientific meaning of the word does not mean identical organisms. And people don't understand that there actually are already millions, if not tens of millions, of human clones walking among us and talking to us. And we don't call them clones, we call them identical twins. But identical twins are clones, according to the scientific definition of the term. So when people are fearful of human cloning, that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about stealing somebody's soul or replicating a person in their wholeness. And that is actually impossible according to the laws of physics as we understand them. It's very interesting to ask what the goal of a bioethics panel is, because it's not clear what a bioethics panel should do. A bioethics panel could serve to give advice to the president or to Congress, or it could serve as a means for educating the public. And the two bioethics panels that have had any weight, the one that President Clinton formed and the one that President Bush formed, they were formed for different purposes. I would like the Obama Bioethics Commission to be more like the Clinton Commission. And the Clinton Commission was chaired by Princeton University President Harold Shapiro. He was an economist. Clinton brought him in because he didn't know any bioethics or biotechnology. He put together a committee of well-known voices. He had legal scholars, and he had public policy people and economists, and he had some representatives from religion. And the point there really was to educate. That was the point of the committee, was to educate rather than suggest laws. The Bush Commission, their point was to push a particular viewpoint on people. And it was stacked with people who believed that a single cell embryo is a human being. And the whole point of that commission, it was run by Leon Kass, and it had other people like Robert George, who's my colleague. The whole point of that commission was to convince the American public that this was unethical. The Obama Commission, I hope, will be more like the Clinton Commission, to bring in people from different fields to have a scholarly discussion, not to stop debate, but to have a discussion which brings light onto the topic, and also light onto where the disagreements are. Nobody disagrees that human beings deserve human rights. The disagreement in terms of human embryo research or stem cell research comes down to, is the cell a human being or not? And that's a religious question. And we have to get the public to understand that's the disagreement. It's a very specific question that's religious in basis.